In this video, I want to show you how to knit the Stamen stitch. Now this stitch is created using just knit stitches and slipped stitches, so it is a little bit like the garter slip stitch, but it has a very distinctly different texture to that particular stitch pattern. It's a 4-row repeat, so it's a nice short repeat to get the hang of, and the texture that you get from this stitch is so unbelievably soft and squishy. It does have a very definite right and wrong side, so this is the right side of the work that has all those slipped stitches, but the beauty of this stitch is that the reverse looks like garter stitch, so although it's not classified as a reversible stitch, both sides would work equally well in a project that you would like to look the same on both sides, for instance a blanket or a dishcloth or even a scarf. This stitch pattern lays perfectly flat, so you get no curling at the sides, and with just a 4-row repeat it's really easy to get the hang of. In some places you will see the pattern multiple for Stamen Stitch written as 2 + 1, but that's really just a fancy way of saying that you need to cast on an odd number of stitches. So as long as your cast on has an odd number of stitches, this pattern will work perfectly. I'm just going to cast on a very small sample today of 21 stitches, but you can cast on as many or as few stitches as you like. Row 1 is a right side row, as are all your odd numbered rows in this project, and it's a really nice and easy row. You just want to knit every single stitch all the way across. So no slipped stitches on this row, every single stitch is a knit stitch. Row 2 is a wrong side row, and this is the row where we start slipping stitches to introduce that texture. We're going to repeat 2 stitches all the way across until we have just 1 stitch left to work, and you want to start your row by knitting the first stitch. The second stitch of the 2-stitch repeat is your slipped stitch, and you are going to slip it purlwise with the yarn at the back or the yarn behind. The way you do this is you pop your needle in from right to left as if you were going to purl, so you're not going to go in as if to knit. You want to go in as if to purl. You're going to slip it firmly onto your right hand needle and then take your left hand needle out, all while keeping your working yarn at the back of your work. Then you're going to go back to the beginning of that repeat and you're going to knit 1 and then slip 1 with the yarn behind. So knit 1 and slip 1 purlwise with the yarn behind all the way across until you have 1 stitch left to work, and that should come after you have slipped a stitch. The final stitch of the row is just a knit stitch. That's because we've got an odd number of stitches, so we're working in pairs, so the final stitch is always just going to make things symmetrical at either end. Row 3 is another right side row, and just like we did with row 1, you are going to knit every single stitch all the way across. When you knit this row, you will find that the stitches that you slipped on the previous row will sit slightly behind the stitches that you knit, but you just want to knit them as normal. That is normal when you slip the stitch, that it sits just slightly behind on the needles. Row 4 is the final row of our 4-row repeat, and it's very similar to row 2, but we're going to stagger the order that we work our stitches so that those slipped stitches stagger on the work when it's finished. So you want to start your row by slipping the first stitch with the yarn behind, and then you're going to knit 1, and you want to repeat that all the way across your row until you have 1 stitch left. So you are going to slip 1 with the yarn at the back or yarn behind, and then you're going to knit 1, slip 1 and then knit 1 all the way along your row until you have 1 stitch left. And if you've worked your stitches correctly, that should come after you have knitted a stitch. So your final stitch before you work your last stitch of the row should be a knit stitch, like I've just done there. Then the final stitch of the row, to make things even either end, is a slip 1 purlwise with the yarn behind. And that completes your 4-row repeat. What I just want to do for you is show you how you start the next row 1 that you work, because you have this slipped stitch here, so you just want to make sure that you work the first stitch of row 1 in the right way when you come to the beginning of your repeat again, so that you get a nice edge up here. So when you've turned your work after the end of row 4, you're going to find that your working yarn is here at the front of your work on your penultimate stitch of the previous row, because we slipped this stitch, we didn't knit it. What you want to do is you want to pop your yarn to the back of your work by lifting it and wrapping it round gently around that final stitch that we slipped, and then you can go ahead and work your row 1 by knitting every stitch. But by lifting that yarn round like that, it still gives you that slipped stitch effect on that very final stitch. But aside from that, you just go straight back into the beginning of your 4-row repeat, and row 1 you are knitting every stitch. And that's how you knit the stamen stitch. Just one pointer before I go: when you cast off your work, if you want to have the matching row of purl bumps top and bottom, you want to make sure that you cast off on a wrong side row, not on a right side row. You can either do that by working your pattern order, so knit 1, slip 1, and then cast off as you go. And if you don't feel confident enough to do that, you can just knit your way across and work a basic knitted cast off and omit those slipped stitches. You really don't notice much difference. That's what I've done here. So that's all from me for today. I'll see you for another video soon, and I will leave you with another stitch pattern that you might find equally as fun to learn.